You know those 3 a.m. challenge videos everyone makes fun of? The ones where some dude says, "Guys, it's 3 a.m. and we're gonna summon the devil." And then they run around screaming at nothing? Yeah, that was us. I was part of that circus. My name's Leo, and until recently, I was the cameraman and best friend of George, better known as Gameboy Maniac to his 2.7 million YouTube subscribers. We'd been making 3 a.m. challenge videos for about 2 years, and we knew exactly how to make them spooky enough for kids to click, but never real enough to actually scare anyone. Most of our hauntings were just George in a sheet or me shaking a chair off camera. We had it down to a science. But the last video we filmed together was not staged, and I don't think George is alive anymore. I need to get this off my chest because no one believes me. His family thinks he just went missing and that I'm too traumatized to talk. But I know what happened, and if I don't put this somewhere, I'm afraid whatever took George might come for me too. It started like every other night. George scrolling through comments, looking for suggestions on where to film next. We were in his messy apartment, empty Red Bulls scattered on the desk, neon lights glowing in the background. "Yo, Leo, check this out," George said, turning his monitor toward me. The comment was short, but something about it made my stomach turn. "Go to the Hollow Creek Asylum at 3 a.m. Don't fake it this time. Record everything. If you don't, you'll regret it." There were no emojis, no laughing faces, no usual "love you, bro." That most fans left. Just that warning. George grinned like he'd just struck gold. Perfect. Creepy abandoned asylum, mysterious commenter. This is YouTube gold. I wasn't thrilled. Hollow Creek was a good 40-minute drive outside the city, and from what I'd heard, the place wasn't just abandoned, it was dangerous. Broken floors, collapsed ceilings, not to mention the urban legend about the warden, who still watched over his patients. But George was already hyped. "Come on, man. Real or fake, we're gonna break 1 million views easy." So I went. We pulled up around 2:40 a.m. The asylum was a huge rotting building with shattered windows like broken teeth and graffiti covering the walls. The night air was thick and wet, and the place smelled like rust and mold, even from the parking lot. George started filming right away, doing his usual intro. "What's up, Game Boy fans? Today, we're at the infamous Hollow Creek Asylum, one of the most haunted places in the country. They say the spirits of the patients still roam the halls, so of course, we're gonna go in at 3 a.m. and find out if the legends are real. Let's get IT." Normally, I'd laugh behind the camera or make some snarky comment to keep the vibe light. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we shouldn't be there. My chest felt heavy. We got inside through a broken side door. The building was worse than I expected. Peeling paint, rotting furniture, the smell of old urine, and burned wood. Every sound we made echoed down the halls. We killed time until 3 a.m. setting up our lights and GoPros in different rooms. George wanted as many angles as possible, in case something epic happens. At exactly 3 o'clock, George clapped his hands and said, "Showtime." The first half hour was normal. We did our usual bits, knocking on walls, calling out into the dark, pretending to hear footsteps. We even did a staged ghost sighting, with George throwing a sheet over a wheelchair and letting it roll into view. But then, around 3:34, the air changed. I don't mean that figuratively. The air literally got heavier, like stepping into a sauna. My ears popped like we were underwater, and then the hallway light nearest us flickered and went out. "That wasn't me," George said, his voice suddenly quieter. I turned the camera toward him, expecting to see his usual grin, but he looked scared. Another light went out, and another, until we were standing in almost total darkness with just our flashlights. Then, from somewhere deep in the asylum, we heard it. A scream. Not a loud horror movie scream, A small, broken, wet scream, like someone trying to scream while drowning. We froze. "Yo, that was sick," George said after a second, forcing a laugh. We couldn't have staged that better if we tried. But I could see his hands shaking. We followed the sound, because of course we did. Because that's what you do when you're a pair of idiots with a camera. The hallway stretched forever, the peeling walls seeming to close in as we walked. Our footsteps echoed too loud, like the building was amplifying them. The scream came again, closer this time. And then we saw it, a shadow move across the hallway ahead of us. George whispered, "Did you get that?" "Yeah," I said, but my voice cracked. We turned the corner, and there it was. A figure standing at the end of the hall, facing the wall. It was tall, too tall. Its head almost touched the ceiling. Its arms hung limp at its sides, and its fingers were so long they brushed the floor. I thought it was a trick of the light until it turned its head. Not all the way, just enough that we could see a face. It didn't have eyes, just two black, wet holes. Then it smiled. I swear to God, its jaw unhinged and stretched until the smile went almost ear to ear. And then it ran at us. We bolted. George was screaming into the camera, not fake screaming, real screaming, the kind of scream that rips your throat raw. We ducked into a side room and slammed the door. Something hit the door a second later, hard enough to rattle it on its hinges. Then silence. I could hear George panting. I could hear my own heartbeat. And then we heard whispering, right outside the door. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language I recognized, but it was angry. George grabbed my arm. "We have to leave. Now." We waited a full minute before opening the door. The hallway was empty. We ran. Every hallway looked the same. Every turn led to another corridor. I swear we passed the same rusted gurney 3 times. And then we saw something we hadn't seen before. A set of double doors with a sign that said Ward C Isolation. We should have turned back, but the doors creaked open by themselves. George pointed the camera at me. "Do we go in?" I shook my head. "No. Hell no." He swallowed hard, then whispered, "Views, man." And he went in. The room was massive, with cells lining the walls. Most of them were empty, but a few had broken restraints hanging from the walls. The smell was unbearable, rot and something metallic. And then I noticed the writing. Every inch of the walls was covered in words. Some carved into the concrete, some smeared in something dark. Over and over again, the same phrase. "He sees you at 3. George panned the camera across the room, whispering, "Guys, this is insane. Look at this." And then the cell at the far end slammed shut. We both jumped. When we turned, there was someone standing inside it. No, not someone. Something. It was hunched over, its back twisted, its head bent at a sick angle. Its hands were clutching the bars, skin stretched too tight over bone. And it was smiling. I dropped the camera. George grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the door. But the doors were gone. I'm not kidding. Where the double doors had been, there was just a solid wall. We were trapped. And then every single cell door started to open, slowly, one by one. We backed into the center of the room as shapes started stepping out of the shadows. They were wrong. All of them. Patients, nurses, orderlies, their faces twisted, their limbs bent the wrong way. Their eyes were gone, just black holes staring at us. And they started whispering in unison. I don't know what they were saying, but the sound made my head pound like it was splitting open. George screamed at them to stop, screamed that it was just a prank, that we were just there to film. But they didn't stop. They came closer. That's when George made the worst mistake of his life. He pulled out the crucifix he always wore, a prop he used in exorcism videos, and held it up like it would actually do something. The whispering stopped. For 1 second, everything went dead quiet, and then they screamed, all of them. It was so loud, the camera shattered on the floor. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was outside. The sun was coming up. George was gone. And on the ground next to me, written in what I hope was just paint, were 3 words. One more night. I didn't go home that morning. I sat in my car in the empty lot until noon, shaking, staring at the asylum's broken silhouette in my rearview mirror. I should have left. I should have driven until I was 1,000 miles away. But I couldn't stop thinking about George, about how I left him there, and about the words written next to me. One more night. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that whispering again. When my phone buzzed at 3 a.m., I nearly threw it across the room. But it wasn't a notification. It was a video file from George's phone. I opened it with shaking hands. The footage was grainy, like it was filmed through water. George was on screen, standing in the same room where I last saw him. His face was pale, eyes wide, and his mouth kept opening and closing like he was trying to say something but couldn't. Then he looked straight into the camera, and something behind him smiled. The video ended. No sound, no message. Just that, I didn't even think. I grabbed my keys, my flashlight, and the same crucifix George had dropped. I went back to Hollow Creek. The building looked worse in daylight, but the second I stepped inside, it felt exactly the same. Heavy, wrong. I followed the same route we'd taken, retracing every step. And as soon as the sun dipped below the trees outside, I heard it, that scream. Not far. This time, I didn't run. I kept walking until I reached the double doors to Ward C, except they weren't gone this time. They were waiting for me, wide open. The writing on the walls looked fresher now, like it had been painted that morning. He sees you at 3. The cell where we had seen that thing was open. And George was inside. He was crouched in the corner, his fingernails bloody from scratching at the walls. George! I shouted. He turned his head slowly. At first, I thought he was smiling. But then I realized the skin on his face had been cut, forcing his mouth into a permanent grin. His eyes were gone, just empty black holes where they should have been. But I could still hear his voice in my head. Leo, run. Then the cell door slammed shut, and the other cells began opening again. I backed up as the shadows poured out. They weren't just shapes this time. I could see their faces clearly, each one more rotten, more broken than the last. One of them had no jaw. Another dragged its split-open torso across the floor, intestines trailing behind. And they were whispering again. Only now I could understand them. Stay, stay, stay. I ran to the far end of the room, but there was no exit. The wall where the doors had been was solid again. I turned back, and the figures had circled around me. George's cell opened, and he stepped out. Or what used to be George. His limbs were too long now, his head tilted in an impossible angle. His smile stretched wider as he walked toward me. Come back, Leo, he said, though his lips didn't move. Stay with me. Stay forever. I held up the crucifix, and for a moment, everything stopped. The whispering cut off. The figures froze. George, or the thing wearing his skin, tilted its head like it was curious. Then it started laughing. A horrible, gurgling laugh that echoed through the room. The figures joined in, all of them laughing in that same wet, broken way. And then the lights went out. I don't know how I got out. I remember running, hitting walls, feeling hands grabbing at me. I remember hearing George screaming, not in my head this time, but behind me, like he was being dragged back. When I burst through the side door and into the night, it was 3:59 a.m. My arms were covered in scratches. My shirt was torn, and the crucifix was gone. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. But before I got inside, I saw something on the windshield. 3 words smeared in red. See you soon. That was a week ago. Every night since then, I've woken up at exactly 3 a.m. Sometimes I hear footsteps in the hall outside my apartment. Sometimes I hear George's voice whispering, "Come back." Last night I woke up and the crucifix was sitting on my nightstand. I didn't bring it home. I think tonight is my last night because as I write this, my phone just buzzed. Another video. It's George again, but this time he's standing right outside my apartment door, and he's not alone. I can hear them whispering through the walls right now. If I don't post this, no one will ever know what happened to me. If you're reading this, never go to Hollow Creek. Never start a video at 3 a.m. And if you hear whispering outside your door tonight, do not open it. Because if you do, you won't come back. Thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like and subscribe. I will see you again next week.